Thank you, Chris and Steve. My name is Ramona Butz. I am also with the US Forest Service. I am the ecologist for Northwestern California for the Pacific Southwest region, as well as an adjunct faculty member in the Department of Wildland Resources, Forestry and Wildland Resources at Humboldt State University in Arcata. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about the effects of drought in coastal redwood forests in California. And I don't know how to advance. Oh, there we go. Advance my slides. All right. So coastal redwood forests are located in California on a very small band along the coast from the southern tip of Oregon all the way down to about Big Sur in California. These are some of the tallest, the heaviest, and among the oldest trees on Earth. We have individuals that are older than 2,000 years old. And these generally occur from sea level to about 3,000 feet in that coast range. Most about 100 feet above sea level or 30 meters above sea level. And this is a very humid region in California. So there's substantial rainfall that we get here, typically in the winter and the spring. Temperatures are very moderate all year with mild winters and dry summers, typical of that Mediterranean type ecosystem. And so this graphic here as well is a depiction from Save the Redwoods League. And so you can tell the colors here. There's a series of protected lands. The green is the historic range of the redwoods. And then those orange, smaller orange polygons are existing old growth features with some cities to kind of reference you to where you are in California. So fog is interestingly one of the very, very important components of redwood forests. They are quite poor regulators of water use. And so they're very sensitive to ambient humidity and the presence of cloud cover. Their range is really more determined by summer fog than actual winter rainfall. So that's why you see this really thin belt in coastal California. And so it's as far as the fog comes inland is really where they're determined to be. And interestingly, they can be planted outside of that fog belt. But their natural range is really determined by that summer fog more than actual winter annual rainfall. And in this area, most of the rainfall does come in the wintertime. Summers are quite dry. And so fog constitutes more than 30% of the total water input annually for these trees. And it plays a very important role in ameliorating those water deficits. These are shallow rooted trees. And so they have very extensive root systems that cover a large amount of area but are very, very shallow. And so they do depend on fog drip from the needle structure. So the needles actually capture a lot of this fog and drip it down into the lower canopy. And typically in redwood systems, you have an understory of herbaceous species, lots of ferns and shrubs that also play an important role in keeping that soil moisture high during the summer months. So in talking about drought, we have to also consider temperature stress. So as temperatures increase, as we have higher spring and summer temperatures, this increases the rates of maintenance respiration. It elevates the water stress in redwoods, and it decreases that gas exchange, mostly in the central and southern parts of the range. Interestingly, higher spring and summer temperatures in the northern part of the range may stimulate growth to a certain extent. And it is unknown at this point how much warmer that can be before that effect is also felt in the northern populations of redwoods. So during drought, redwoods continue to tap fog as a water source in addition to water captured from the winter rains. So the winter rainfall is stored in these very, very deep, loamy coastal soils and held in place by that understory vegetation. These are largely um, closed canopy systems, so there's not a lot of sunlight that hits the ground in these systems. And the dependence on fog as a moisture source is highest in years when that winter rainfall is the lowest. As long as fog inputs remain normal, and this is something that I'll talk a little bit more about here in terms of climate change in particular and drought in redwoods. And so as that summer drought worsens, the radial growth of mature trees declines. And then seedlings in particular are often stunted and survival rates are very low. And because these are such long-lived species, it's really this seedling recruitment class that is of greatest concern when we're looking at recent droughts in California, because older, mature trees tend to be fairly drought tolerant. It is really looking at that recruitment class of seedlings. And in this case, when you do have those summer droughts, those seedlings are quite stunted and often survival rates are incredibly low. So as Steve and Chris sort of covered already, the 2012 to 2016 California drought caused major decreases in canopy water content in these lowland coastal redwoods. And canopy water content is really an indicator of progressive drought effects. It's correlated with leaf potential water during water stress for these species. And so extreme water stress can actually limit the foliar water uptake, even in mature redwood trees. And that is exacerbated in younger trees. So redwoods, when we're talking about drought and climate change in particular, are most affected by changes in fog frequency and extent. These have huge implications for redwood physiology and ecosystem function. And since the 1950s, we've documented declines in this coastal fog belt and what they call summer low cloudiness. And so that's, your typical coastal days. If you've spent any time in Northwestern California, there's kind of a marine layer that's associated with coastal areas that tends not to burn off until mid to late morning and tends to, in a normal year, roll in late afternoons. And so that also contributes to this summer low cloudiness. And those, both the fog belt and that summer low cloudiness have been declining since about the 1950s. So this pattern is particularly concerning, and it contributes to drought sensitivity in the species, water stress, and reduced survival of both seedlings and mature trees. So as temperatures rise and this evaporative demand grows, redwoods are likely to become increasingly drought stressed, especially in the summertime, without this input of fog as water. So if we want to talk about some drought management strategies in redwoods, the importance of maintaining appropriate stand densities through prescribed burning and mechanical thinning are something that Chris just touched on a fair bit in his talk as well. In redwood forests, the prehistoric or pre-settlement fire return interval or fire regime was an average of about 23 years, with a range of a very large range of about 10 years to 170 years. And so with fire suppression, especially with the ingrowth of communities along the coast, a lot of the regular fire has been reduced within these redwood stands, and you have an ingrowth of other species such as Douglas-fir, and competition from those species. So maintaining those appropriate stand densities through thinning and through prescribed burning, such as the Park Service frequently conducts here along the North Coast. Another strategy would be to reduce practices that create structures that are too open. So canopy covers that are too thin. So when you reduce the canopy in redwood forest, you lose the ability to capture that moisture from fog. And so redwood trees in their canopies really need that overlapping, almost closed canopy structure with all of that needle area, that leaf structure area to pull the fog down and create that fog drip into the lower canopy and into the root system. So it touched on this a little bit, but thinning to compete, thinning competing vegetation. And in redwood forests, it's actually primarily Douglas-fir to promote the growth of residual redwood trees. And this can be done by variable density thinning to sort of result in structures that best mimic that naturally clumped distribution that would have largely been created through fire in these systems historically. And a few other drought management strategies for redwoods include minimizing soil disturbance. Because redwoods are so shallowly rooted, they are very prone to soil disturbance effects, including road construction, driving, other types of activities along those lines. So minimizing all soil disturbance. Creating small gaps for light availability for those regenerative seedlings. So generally, redwood forests are closed canopy systems, but those seedlings do need light, making it to the forest floor to grow. And then if you remember back to the very first slide that I showed over that, the map from Southern Oregon down to Big Sur, protecting those old growth reserves is really important. These really occur in pockets throughout that entire coastline. And then again, where possible, reintroducing low severity fire on the landscape. And this is a pretty frequent fire. And so in this photo, you can see as you go walking through redwoods, these trees have incredible fire scars and fire histories, many of them living to 1500 to possibly 2000 or more years old. And so they have this incredible fire history on them. And so reintroducing that low severity fire on a frequent basis is important for maintaining these systems and also reducing that competition from other species, such as Douglas-fir. And I just want to say thank you. I think I talked a little fast, but here's my contact information. Please do get in touch with me if you have any questions, and I look forward to hearing the rest of the talks. Thank you.